All right, week one is officially in the books. And all I've got to say is skull. This might be the only video where both of us get to have a victory, or it may be the only victory that I have in a long time for my Vikings. But we shall see. Alrighty, to kick us off, obviously we had Baltimore at Kansas City. That was a better game in the second half. The first half was kind of, we saw a lot of struggles from Lamar Jackson. We saw trouble getting Derrick Henry going after the first drive. They didn't really utilize him as much as I thought they were going to. Just kind of coming to terms with everything. Mark Andrews was non-existent the whole game. It seems like they just didn't really have a game plan for the majority of the game until they got Isaiah Likely involved, and he just seemed to beat whatever coverage Kansas City had for them. Ending with that obvious big toe out of bounds. Otherwise, they would have either lost by going for two and not getting it, or they would have won 28-27. Um, Overall, with all the penalties, illegal formation, I'm still hearing that from Thursday, with as many that were called. Um, I think if they eliminated those penalties, I think Baltimore would have easily won that game. Um, but I think that they were just undisciplined and unprepared, and Kansas City obviously was able to take advantage. Matt?
I slightly agree. I agree with most of your points there about the game specifically. I think Baltimore is going to be in more of a finding out their identity. Um, Lamar Jackson was um, under the center for probably the most times he has in a game than in his entire career. That's just somebody who Derrick Henry is. He can't really take it in shotgun and go from there. He needs that 3, 4 yards of hand me back the ball and I'll find the hole wherever in the offensive line. Um, the Ravens offensive line had major issues when you have Lamar Jackson rushing more than Derrick Henry by 3 times and having almost 80 more rushing yards than Derrick Henry. And also for throwing 41 times. That it's just not suitable. Because even with Zay Flowers, like Isaiah Likely was their top receiver. Like Mark Andrews only had 2 catches. He was only targeted twice. Like there's nothing receiving wise that would make you frightened of Baltimore. And with them still trying to decide of whether being a shotgun team versus a under center team, because right now, if Derrick Henry's on the field, they're probably running it. If they take him off the field, they're probably throwing it. And it's one of those things where they really need to figure out who they're going to be and stick with it. You can't just keep telling defenses this is what we're going to do. But Chiefs looks good in the first game. Xavier Worthy, very fast, like we all thought. So one of those things where we'll see how the Ravens turn out this season.
Yeah, that was one thing why I picked the Ravens is I thought they were going to use Henry as a little more. I think they had him on a pitch count, and they definitely didn't, keep running the ball, which we all know Derrick Henry gets better as the game goes on because he wears out the defense. So I think that they just missed that opportunity and they're still trying to figure it out. Like you said, they also played Justice Hill, their backup, who's a receiving back. They played him for more snaps than Derrick Henry, which I think so they were trying to be more of a passing offense with Lamar obviously having his RPO, but I I just think that they're struggling out of the gate. They need to figure out what they want to do on offense. And Kansas City, I agree. Xavier Worthy, the Bills just screwed the whole AFC
Yeah.
with him. I mean, it's not only Tyreek Hill, but he can also rush the ball as we saw. And, he's just a weapon that can be utilized just in so many different ways. And the only real mistake I saw with Kansas City besides the penalties was that terrible interception by Mahomes. But other than
Yeah.
that, they look like a great team.
And I think it's also one of those things where by the time the Ravens got the ball in the second half, they were down 20-10. They couldn't run the ball like they would. I don't know how many teams are going to be able to get ahead of them, but there's questions on that defense, which with Mike McDonald gone, we'll see. Um, just a lot of questions for the Ravens right now, so we'll see what happens. But
Yeah.
going on to the Green Bay Philadelphia game, um, Saquon, welcome back. Three tutties, I believe. Just a really good game for him. But if you were concerned about Jalen Hurts coming into this season, I would not say, yeah, he had 278 yards. I would not say many things were answered about Jalen Hurts on Friday, except he still has the turnover issues. Um, we'll see as they move on. Week one's always a weird game. People are getting the rust off. People are still getting the systems. Weird things happen as we'll go through, especially at the 1 o'clock games. Um, Jordan Love, it's good to see. Now I know not for you, but good to see that he's only hurt for about 3, 4, 5 weeks. So he will come back. It's just for the Packers. Can you go 2-2, even 1-3? Like, yeah, you're 0-1 already, but just getting 1 or 2 wins over the next couple of weeks with Malik Willis will really keep them in contention because they can come back and win games afterwards. It's just you can't go 0 for 4, 0 for 5 in the next few weeks. So we'll see what happens.
Yep. To start out, I just want to say that I do not believe in wishing injury upon anyone, even if they are the Green Bay Packers. So when I saw that, I did go, man, I hope he's all right. I hope it's not a serious injury. And also, in addition to not wishing injury, I also believe in being able to play your division opponents at full strength. That way, nobody can look at you and say, oh, well, we didn't have so and so was hurt, blah, blah, blah. So, we got Green Bay week 4. I want them to be at full strength for that game. So hopefully, uh, Love can be back for that game. But I mean, overall, this was a back and forth game, and I do just want to put some emphasis on the field they were playing on in Brazil.
It was bad.
Um, that field was very bad. Think it could be on the level of MetLife or Washington's field, maybe even a little worse.
Or like the
Um,
Arizona Super Bowl, where how bad that field was. So
yeah.
Philadelphia had some experience with bad fields. So
Yeah, and I think that, Jalen Hurts, is it with the new center? Is it him again with the field as well? I think it's, I don't like you said, I don't think any questions were answered. I don't think you can really go, one way or the other with him. Um, I think that the Eagles did end up firing on all cylinders on offense once they figured out how to get their footing. That might be pun intended with the field. I think Green Bay was also very hot out of the gates, and Jaden Reed, as much as the Packers have, a lot of wide receivers, twos and threes, not really a clear one. Jaden Reed made a name for himself, in that game, and overall, I think they were pretty good. Both teams. I don't know if Green Bay would have won if Love didn't get hurt at the last snap because they still would have needed to make a Hail Mary for a touchdown. But overall, very close game week 1 between two tough opponents, and I liked watching that game. I liked what I saw. So we'll have to get more answers as the weeks go on. And I don't think Green Bay is dead to rights. Their defense looked good. And I think that if Malik Willis can at least not turn the ball over, I think they have a chance to win some of these games without Love.
yeah, they
But
have
with
the
that, we'll move
offensive
on.
pieces, even if there's nobody, there's no like Justin Jefferson or Jamar Chase on the Packers, but they still have good weapons. Um, I believe AJ Dillon's on the IR for the rest of the
Yeah,
year
he's
now.
season-ending injury. Yep,
Uh, but you still have what's his name? Crud.
Josh Jacobs.
Josh Jacobs. So hopefully they can keep the run game going because I feel like even when Love gets back, I wouldn't say he needs like it's not like a rookie quarterback situation where they need the run game going to keep the pressure off of them. I feel like he can still be a good passing quarterback without a amazing run game, but
Mhm.
still you just don't want to even give it up to a chance of nobody's scared of your run game. Um, But for the
Yeah,
Eagles,
and
before we
having
move,
balance is good for all quarterbacks.
yeah. But before we go on to the Pittsburgh Atlanta game, two picks, one fumble for the Eagles. It's just not sustainable. Green Bay wasn't able to convert. If you have a team that now, because I think they had two turnovers in like the first two drive or like first three drives, you just can't
Mhm.
do it.
Also, it was two fumbles as well, so it was four turnovers by the Eagles.
That was just three.
I believe it was four actually. Oh,
Tyler, I'm looking at it right now, bud.
okay, interesting. I saw four turnovers, but all right.
Um, Pittsburgh, Atlanta, ugly ass game. Um,
Cousins did not look good.
no, I'm not. I'm gonna give it a couple weeks just because Kirk Cousins didn't fully come, wasn't even cleared until like the middle of training camp. So I feel like there's still a bit of rust. There's still a bit of chemistry he's trying to get. But that offensive line struggled. Now you're not facing a TJ Watt all 17 weeks, but it was a
Yep.
TJ Watt wrecking crew and the Pittsburgh kicker, and that was all Pittsburgh had that day. Um, I don't have much for this game just because there's so many more so many more questions that we need that we'll see in the next couple of weeks, but not
I
many answers
will
here.
Yeah, I will say that with as unentertaining as this game was to watch, I think that there's a lot of positives you can take from both teams because Atlanta's defense is no slouch with all the free agent acquisitions they acquired. So I think that, they're going to gel pretty quickly. And Pittsburgh should be happy that they at least have Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. Now, obviously, Russell Wilson didn't play because he was injured. Justin Fields, however, came in and did exactly what they needed him to do. He didn't turn the ball over. He passed for 156 yards, which isn't great, but neither offense really showed up big in this game. Then he also had a good deal of rushing yards and was able to get them to kick six field goals. So I mean, don't turn the ball over. Move the ball downfield, get points. That's really all you can ask from a backup quarterback who was told what 2 days before that he had to start. So
And the
I
rule
think there's
decision wasn't
good
even
things
made
there.
until like hour before game day. So,
Yeah.
which I'm not sure about that. It might have been the night before that because when Russ went out to warm up on Sunday, none of the trainers or staff was with him. So it was probably Friday they made a decision. But um, yeah, that's really all for that game.
Yeah. Moving on to Arizona at Buffalo, this we were not wrong to say this would potentially be an upset with Arizona. It looked like it was going that way for a while. Um, the Bills finally got it together and were able to come on top for that game. Josh Allen being Josh Allen, but I mean, man, if you're Buffalo, you're really kicking yourself for trading away Xavier Worthy, essentially.
Yeah, I thought
Not
you were
only
going to
just giving
say
him to the Chiefs, but you could have taken him for yourself.
yeah, I thought you were going to say what's his name? Crud, I'm blanking
Diggs,
right now. Yeah, I thought you were going to say Diggs, and I'm like, eh. But yeah, Xavier
nah,
Worthy would have really helped out. But
yeah, he needs more weapons, and I mean, I don't think they're gonna escape games like against tougher opponents. I mean, Arizona's gelling it together. They passed to Marvin Harrison Jr. one time for 4 yards.
4 yards, that's it.
So I mean, you're going up against a team that hasn't even figured out how to use their new weapon, and you only win by 6 points. So I think that, the Buffalo facing tougher opponents in the future, if they don't figure it out with the guys they have and their guys don't step up, Buffalo is going to go on a losing streak.
Yeah,
Um, but overall, if you're Arizona, you're excited for this season because you may not be a playoff team, but you can certainly play spoiler for a lot of teams this year with that type of offense. Um, so I mean, overall, I think that you know, bright side for Arizona, you're feeling pretty good, even though it lost. And if you're Buffalo, you're feeling really nervous after that win.
okay, on to Tennessee and Chicago. Chicago didn't win this game. Tennessee lost this game.
That is true.
I don't know
Caleb
if you saw
Williams
that pick
did not
six.
do well.
I don't know if you saw that pick six from Will Levis. Throw it out of bounds. Don't. none of this like, oh, let me backhand this without me even looking. Throw the damn ball out of bounds.
Yep.
Like, and it's hard to say. I feel like Caleb Williams is probably one just nerves. They were facing um, second, third, fourth strings all preseason, so this was the
Mhm.
first time it was real speed football. We'll see the next couple weeks, but ugly game for Chicago. You're just
Yep.
lucky that your defense and special teams pulled you out the win, but you're not going to be able to pull out wins like this for many games.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, if you're both of these teams, you're just looking to clean up things or later in the season and
Yeah.
hope that that'll lead to wins. Because I mean, if Chicago can clean up the offense, Caleb gets used to it. That can be dangerous with their defense, special teams, and then Tennessee, if they can figure out that offense, they're going to be dangerous as well. So I think just cleaning off the rust for both those teams, and then New England, and I can't see a team there. It just shows a blur. So.
Yeah.
New England came in to a field and scored 16 points, they getting their win. So surprising both of us since we said they'd be the first pick, but both of us did say they'd win a couple games. So props to them for winning a game. I think it was more that the Bengals just have such a big streak with losing week 1 games, but I'm still so surprised that they just did not show up whatsoever. So
It was so many mistakes. Like you had a touchdown that was overturned, and then you go for it again, and the guy fumbles and just hands the ball to the defense at near the end zone. Just too many mistakes. Um, Even though I don't think the Patriots are going to be anywhere near playoff contention, you just can't walk in and think, oh, it's an easy win. Um, Ramondre Stevenson still showing he's a good back, even if nobody really sees him as elite. Jacoby Brissett would play pretty well, and it's one of those games you overlook your opponent. Can't or Cincinnati has the Chiefs next week. I can probably bet you what had happened. Um, they were looked overlooked New England, and New England punched them in the mouth.
yep. And I will say Ramondre Stevenson is such an underrated back in general. Like problems with the offensive line obviously hurt his production last year, but I mean that is a great back, both rushing and receiving. So that's going to be New England. That's going to be New England's key to winning a few more games, as well as Brissett winning, doing well enough for them. But moving on to Houston and Indianapolis, Richardson, I believe he attempted 9 passes or completed 9 what's the stat there?
Hold
He
on.
didn't he didn't pass very much, but when he did, he was extremely effective.
He made 9 completions out of 19.
Okay. Yeah. And I mean, losing by 2 when you're doing that, I mean, he had a bunch of big plays doing that, and I mean, that was a good game to watch. Houston's still back to elite status. CJ Stroud hasn't missed a beat since last year. That's a very dangerous team. And I think Indianapolis can be excited with their performance and think that they can beat some easier opponents down the road. I don't have much else to say.
I wouldn't say Stroud immediately came back from last year. I feel like there was a little bit of kinks that they were working out, but in the second half, things got going. Joe Mixon played really well, um, 5 yards per carry, I believe. Really good game. Honestly, after his time with Cincinnati, I didn't think he'd be. I thought he would help just because Houston didn't really have that good of a bell cow back, but did not expect that from him. Um, Only worry about Richardson. Yeah, he completed those deep passes. Yeah, he had 6 carries for 56 yards. So injury stuff, I'm leaving that out. But I saw several passes that wide open guys in the NFL. Now you're never going to have completely wide open unless it's a bust in coverage, but basically wide open guys, and he misses them. Like he had some deep accuracy issues, and you're not going to be able to fix all of that during the year. That's just going to be some. Hopefully, he can make it through the year non-injured, and then over the off season, basically pull Lamar Jackson and just work on his throwing accuracy because there were several of those passes that were just off by like 10 yards. So
Yeah.
now, also, this was his first game back since what, week 4 or 5 last year.
Mhm.
So now he played in the preseason, but this was his real actual game or first actual game. So one of those things, we'll see how things go. Hopefully, he can stay healthy because it's fun to watch him, but haven't really heard anybody really talk about the accuracy issues. So just something I wanted to bring up.
There we go. Jacksonville taking on Miami. I think this was a lot closer than we thought this was going to be. Um, I certainly did not expect Jacksonville to be in a close contention with Miami, but Tyreek Hill getting arrested before the game, them letting him go was certainly big for them, as you can see, receiving leader with 130 yards. Overall, Dolphins need to find more balance. I don't know if Jacksonville was just better with rushing defense as far as their defensive line. I'm not really sure what goes on there, but Miami really just had to rely heavily on the pass, and I think that kind of gave Jacksonville their idea of how to defend them. And overall, this was a lower scoring game than I anticipated. And I think that again, just getting rust off. I don't really want to take too much from week one, but I think it's just one of those. Both of them got to shake some dust off and try to be better prepared for week two.
I think it was one of those things where Jacksonville got ahead so fast that Miami really had to just throw the ball around to try to get back in. Some questionable play calling from Jacksonville in the second half. I feel like there's going to be some issue or some answers needing there, but Jacksonville just needs to learn how to keep on leads. Usually play better from behind just because they're not trying to maintain leads. I feel like both teams are still going to be competitive. Miami started off really shaky, but in the second half they finally got back into it. So just a lot of things needing cleanup on both sides. But speaking of taking out the trash, Carolina is going to be the number one pick. I know I said New England before, but it's going to be Carolina. Carolina, get ready for a miserable year, and you might be picking Sanders with the first pick in the next draft.
It's certainly a three-horse race between them, the Patriots, and the Giants. We'll get to them in a minute. Um, Yeah, I think when you allow Derek Carr to look like a Hall of Fame quarterback, um, you definitely got some problems. And a lot of the Saints players were able to get theirs. It went around. Um, and I think that just dropping 47 week one and only allowing 10, I know it is to the Panthers, but just a very, very good showing for the Saints. Can they keep it up against better teams? That will be the question. But overall, no real questions for the Saints besides that, in my opinion. Just continue utilizing their weapons. Carolina, I mean, I think you expected this year to be full of suffering.
But that was
Maybe
horrible.
yeah, that was much worse. Your only hope is that you can play a slightly closer games in the future and that maybe you squeak out an upset or two. But I mean, cool. Or maybe it's just a divisional matchup weirdness because that does happen. So
I can't. I just don't see it. It's just your first pass of the 2024 NFL season being a pick, and then coming out in the second half and then throwing another pick on that drive. 13 of
mhm.
30 for 161 yards. That's not good. Like not even that's not great. That's just not good.
There were
Um,
a few quarterbacks who had their first pass being a pick, actually.
and then
Now that you
Miles
mentioned
Sand
that. So
moving on. Um, Miles Sanders 5 carries for 22 yards, and that's your leading rusher. Well, we'll get to the Bryce Young conversation later because I have some questions for you about takeaways, but we'll get to that in a bit. But moving on.
Yep, skipping over the Raiders and Chargers, or sorry, skipping over to the Raiders and Chargers game. Um, yeah, so I wonder what the outcome would have been if Pierce had actually decided to go for the 4th and 1 in Chargers territory. I don't know if that was just a brain fart or what happened, but that cost them the game. That was the moment they lost. When he did not go for that, I literally just said, "Okay, Chargers just won the game." Because even without going up to 22, they could just run the clock out at that point. And I mean, the Chargers were able to rush for a ton against the uh, Raiders, but I don't know if that's going to be sustainable against other teams, especially better run defenses. Um, I mean, again, their receivers really aren't the best. I mean, you look over here at the receiving leader of the game was Jacoby Myers, and that's only 61 yards, and Los Angeles didn't even have a guy near that. I think there was what 50 yards by somebody,
Justin
but
Herbert had 144 yards passing. Their leading was Vlad McConkey with 39 yards.
39 yards. Yeah, so I mean, I don't know what they're going to do against run defense teams. And I don't know if that's more of a showing of Las Vegas just being inept at offense week 1. They need to shake some rust off. Gardner Minshew had trouble finding Devontae Adams for the first 3 quarters. So I think that that's a very telling sign that they needed to get back into it. Their defense, pass rushing wise, is still much better than you would expect for the Raiders, but otherwise, I don't if you're both these teams, you're not really expecting much anyway.
Yeah, Raiders. There's going to be some issues with that offensive line. 4 sacks for 32 yards. Um, with somebody like Gardner Minshew, you just can't allow that. And then welcome back, J.K. Dobbins. Even without the 61-yard run, which was his longest of the day, still around 8 yards per carry on 9 other carries. He had 10 carries for 135 yards. So, welcome back, J.K. Dobbins. And yeah, not much to say from this game. This one was ugly, which that's what Los Angeles wants. So, playing by how they want to play, and Las Vegas just got dictated by it.
Agreed. Skipping to the Dallas and Cleveland game. This was just domination by Dallas. Cleveland, I mean, how they got to 17 is beyond me. Um, their
Honestly, we
defense
don't
did not
even
show up like
we
I
don't
thought
even
they
need to
would.
talk about Dallas. Deshaun Watson is washed.
Yeah. He had what would have been a vintage moment getting out of what would have been a sack and then just throws to the receiver's feet. Like it almost we had a flash of what we used to see, and then it just as soon as it hit the receiver's feet, you're just like, man, he just does not have it anymore. And I mean, the guy was open, so it's not really you can say much about like, oh well, Dallas's defense is just really good. Well, hit a wide open receiver. Um, yeah, I don't know what you do if you're Cleveland. I mean, all you can do is hope that Nick Chubb comes and be and is a world beater when he's back. But they already mentioned that they're going to try and ease him back in, so
You're probably not
not
getting
really
him
sure.
back till week 6 or 7 at the
Yeah,
earliest. I don't see him coming back by week 5. I could see it being 7 or 8, especially if they're like 0-7, 2-5. Um, but speaking about the quarterback that they sent away while after he played for injury one year and thought he was washed, 289 yards,
and very efficient. MVP, MVP, MVP. Yeah.
24 of
If it,
30,
yeah, go.
289, 4 TDs.
Mm-hmm.
Now it was against Washington. Washington, Jaden Daniels played okay.
Jane
Ran for
Daniels is great,
16
by the way.
carries, 88 yards, 2 TDs. It's just one thing about running quarterbacks is I didn't see much of this game, so I don't know how he was running. But if you have a running quarterback, it gets in that dangerous situation that they could be hurt, and especially with Washington, it's we'll see what happens. But Tampa Bay looked strong coming out of the gates, and we'll see if they can repeat for the NFC South.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned that you change your number one pick to Carolina. I would change my division pick to Tampa Bay.
Yeah,
If Atlanta continues to look like they did and Tampa Bay continues to look like this, I will say I saw more of that game. Jaden Daniels did look really good, and I think if the coaching staff figures out a way to introduce him to another guy that's on the field at the same time, Terry McLaurin, I think that could be a hookup that we could see in the future. I think McLaurin maybe had like he only I think he caught his first pass in the fourth quarter. So
I
I
think it
don't
was
know
like
if
in
he just
the
was
end of the
looking
third.
his way. I don't know what was going on there, but I mean that's your best passing weapon. So I mean you got to find that guy and you got to get him the ball. At least give him a touch. Like let him rush for a couple of yards on a end around. Like you got to do something. But overall, Jaden Daniels looked pretty good in my opinion. I think that Tampa Bay just was able to get out to an early lead, and Washington have to try and come back. And defense being a little bit stronger on Tampa Bay side, just wasn't as good. But I mean, I think if you're Washington, that was probably better than what you expected for first game. So pretty good. Moving
Even
on
with
to
Baker Mayfield like going world beater, still a close game score wise. And for the Commanders, that's something you're just hoping for this year. And honestly, I could see them getting a top five pick still, and then getting someone like Travis Hunter, which that would be great for them. So
yeah. Moving on. Matthew Stafford gave his old team the win here. Um, yeah, I mean the Lions like they didn't look bad by any means. They definitely looked like a good team. But I honestly think that if Matthew Stafford was, you know, more careful and more selective of his passes, I think Los Angeles wins this game. Um, you had great showings by both offenses. Um, Detroit obviously coming up with some key interceptions to seal the game, and others throughout the game. So I think that just being able to turn over the ball, and the pass rush by Detroit was very, very good against Los Angeles. So I think that that's definitely something you take away from that game.
who are
Um,
you smoking?
hmm?
There was only one pick.
Oh, one pick?
Yeah.
Interesting. He fumble?
No,
Oh, okay. I'm mixing up my games then.
you probably are.
Oh well. But anyway, they sealed the win. And I don't know, Matthew Stafford just looks shaken, and obviously Puka Nakua is on IR now, so wishing him the best in a speedy recovery. But I think that overall, I mean, good game. I mean, if you go to overtime with a team that was just in the NFC Championship game, I think that you got to feel pretty good
Yeah.
about that showing. And obviously Detroit getting a win, what you need, just keep stacking them. It's really about it. Jameson Williams finally is here.
I will say for Detroit, it's just secondary they need to get some work on. 317 passing yards from Matthew Stafford. Um, Cooper Cup getting 110. He's going to get his yards, but that was also with Puka Nakua only having 4 catches for 35 yards. Like, it's one of those, if Puka didn't get hurt, how many more yards would he have had? Um,
Mhm.
but it's one of those things where I feel kind of right about my assumption about especially the Rams defensive line. That whole last drive or that whole drive in overtime, I think except the one play was all just runs. And it's one of those things where if I can just run on that defense, especially as it gets tired, that's going to be a real bad thing for the Rams, especially in this division. Seattle likes to run the ball late. 49ers like to run the ball, as we'll see in the Jets game. One of those things, if they can't stop the run, it's going to be a long year for this Rams team.
Absolutely. And as you alluded to, speaking of running over their opponents, San Francisco, without Christian McCaffrey, just proves that Shanahan's offense, any quarterback, any running back that wants to come in there and play for that team, you have got the best situation you possibly could have. Um, and kudos to Jordan Mason for making the most of that opportunity. And I think he just made, himself, I think he made the coaches aware that you might want to start giving him a couple more touches to relieve McCaffrey a couple times,
Yeah.
keep him fresh throughout the season. And I mean, don't be deceived by this score either. San Francisco shifted out their first string, as did New York, and they got a late touchdown to Alan Lazard. So it really should have just been 12 for them. But uh, Aaron Rodgers survived the game, which is good. Um, and he looked rusty for sure, but he did have his vintage moment with the free play for a touchdown to Alan Lazard as well. So I mean, he's got something left in him. So we'll see if what he looks like against a team that's not from the Super Bowl. Um, and overall, just dominating performance by San Francisco.
Yeah, I have nothing else to really add for San Francisco, but for the Jets, there's some worries with that coaching staff. They were not putting any like scheme wise, they were not putting anything scheme wise to get any of those wide receivers open to give Brees Hall easy runs. Where the 49ers with Mason, they were some runs are hard were tough, but a lot of those runs you have at least some sort of gap in the line made by Shanahan to give those running backs some space to at least get out to that second level to start making plays. You never really saw any of those receivers get open scheme wise for the Jets, nor any easy runs. So every throw and catch Rodgers made, or every throw that Rodgers made, was in tight windows the entire game. And you just can't do that. He's not going to be able to get back to MVP form just that age. And it's been over a year, or basically a year, since he's played. So it's one of those things where you can't expect him to just be MVP Aaron Rodgers to make those tight throws the whole game and save you from bad coaching. So we'll see what happens, but they've got some work to do this week.
And you mentioned some questions before our teams.
We'll get to those afterwards. Go ahead.
Oh, so go ahead and jump into our
Yep,
teams.
yep, yep, yep.
All right. Well, I actually want to start with your game because I just want to say a couple things real quick, and then I'll be done. If you're a Seahawks fan, you are very excited because you have the Legion of Boom 2.0. So this is definitely a team to be excited about for the current and the future. Um, you also have Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet, who decimated the Broncos defense, and you have that run game to be excited about. What you don't have to be excited about is Geno Smith. And I know Matt has stressed that we've seen his ceiling time and time again. Speaking of first pass being a pick, Geno Smith, as well as the fact that they allowed two safeties. Now, one of them was getting into the backfield to tackle Kenneth Walker, but it's very rare to get one safety. Also, very rare. It's even extremely rare to get two. Um, I will say for this game, I did predict that Denver's defense would be a little bit better than you gave them credit for, and I just want to say one score game, two safeties. So they did back me up there, but um Legion of Boom 2.0 definitely showed up, and I think that you know Seattle, your really only question mark is Geno Smith. What's he going to look like this season? And if you're Denver, I mean, hopefully you get a couple easier opponents and can get Bo Nix comfortable, but not a great performance for that offense whatsoever.
Okay, here we go. For the few things you said, the two safeties, one was a holding penalty in the end zone, and the second was Zach Charbonnet getting tackled in the end zone and wasn't able to get back. Now, there was almost a potential third with Kenneth Walker getting a short pass and then almost being tackled back in the end zone. Um, but it was one of those things where it turned out to be a really weird game where we picked off Joe Burr, or not Joe Burr, what the heck, Bo Nix at the 1 yard line, and that just put us in a very bad spot. And then the next time it was a punt stop at the 1 yard line. You're not going to have several times in the game where you're starting at your 1 yard line. Um, but there is some offensive line work to be done. George Fant was injured during the game. Hopefully he's okay. Didn't really hear anything from McDonald about that. Um, so we'll see what happens. But I will say, as a fan, would I love this to be a blowout like Super Bowl 48 where we destroyed them? Yes. But as somebody who wants this team to succeed this year and from moving on from this year, I almost feel like this game needed to happen. The rookie head coach got his first win against Sean Payton, which I heard that Sean Payton doesn't lose to rookie head coaches. Well, here we are. But also there were things from this win that can be used as easy teaching moments. There were easy things that are able to be taken to practice this week and cleaned up. Um, I didn't feel like the mistakes were because of lack of talent, just discipline and getting more cohesion with the offensive line, which hopefully as the year goes on, it'll get healthier. Um, if I heard it correctly, Seattle's defense did not have one penalty, at least accepted. Um, which for any Seahawks fans that knew from the Pete Carroll era, that's unheard of for this team. Um, it's a well disciplined defense. And there were things during the game where I think it was Witherspoon who said after the game that there's still things that people haven't seen from this defense. Um, Denver was running to the line, going quick tempo, so Seattle wasn't able to get into those um, coverage formations that McDonald likes to do. So there's still more from this defense. And for Bo Nix, I don't want to hear that he's rookie. I don't want to hear it because all I heard was he's a veteran presence who's the oldest rookie ever to start, I believe, at least as a QB. A lot of these things where he was supposed to be a veteran. He's played for I don't know how many years in college football. So 26 of 42, 138, two INTs, and only had a rushing touchdown. I'd say that's a good day at the office.
Yeah, I mean for a rookie against a great defense, I would say he did pretty well. I'd agree. So overall though,
I was
was I
saying good day in
correct
the
in
office
that?
for our defense.
Oh yeah, correct. But I mean for a rookie quarterback, you did better than Caleb Williams. So number one overall pick, so you got to feel good about that. But was I right in terms of as a Seahawks fan, you're excited about the defense and the running game, but you've got questions surrounding Geno Smith?
It would be easy to say no. The answer is yes, but it's one of those things where we just haven't seen like last year there were injury issues and one of those things where this offense was not under good coordinator stance. Um, Shane Waldron is a horrible play caller. I'll say that. Like as I said when we were doing the opening previews, I think you're going to see with the Bears that their play calling is not going to be great. In Seattle, it's just going to get better. Um, Things to clean up, but as somebody who feels like this team could be good this year, I feel like this was a game that we needed to get some stuff cleaned up. A great showing from the defense, and off to the Patriots next week.
There you go. And since I started with your game, I will allow you to start with my game.
I'll let you talk about your Vikings because I feel like you knew what happened in that game better than I would. Sam Darnold finally learned how to play at MetLife Stadium and wasn't seeing
Mm.
ghosts. Honestly, I'd say it was more Daniel Jones seeing ghosts. Um, that's just more of a credit to your defense and Brian Flores and the scheming. But I'll go ahead and ask this question now because it was one of them. Is this Daniel Jones last year with the Giants?
Yeah, absolutely. Um, and this was the how we somehow won a long-term feud, I guess you could say, with the Giants. 2022, when we beat them on Christmas Eve and then lost in the wild card, was the worst defensive coordinator ever for the Vikings, Ed Donatel. I'm so glad he's gone. That is the sole reason why Daniel Jones got his contract. He got that contract their their wild card win, I believe. Um, because he performed very well in both games because our as a coordinator was like, "Hey, just give up here this huge space in the field. Don't cover, don't press, don't do any of this." So, very happy to see that having a great defensive coordinator like Brian Flores can actually cause him to do poorly. My question before I get into this is what team did I just watch? Because I was told and I've been only watching for 2 years now at least, maybe more, that Minnesota is always in one-score games unless they are getting blown out by somebody. And for once, we have a blowout against somebody. I'll just start by saying this score is also a little deceptive. CJ Ham fumbled at, I believe, our own 20 and gave them a free 3 points. Kudos to our defense for stopping them. And then the other 3 points came off of a Sam Darnold interception that was not his fault at all. He went to throw, and Dexter Lawrence, being a beast of a man, arguably the best defensive tackle in football, jumps up there with his big paw, hits the ball, it goes flying up in the air around four Giants, and one of them ends up with the interception, and that leads to the other field goal. So we had several key fourth downs stops on this on our defense, and Andrew Van Ginkel obviously reading that screen like a book, going in for the pick six, the quickest pick six you'll see. I believe it was 1.12 seconds. Um, I think that's the quickest of his career for sure. He had the quickest in the NFL last year, but very underrated offseason acquisition there. Um, Byron Murphy. I've talked about him so long about how he gets burned when he plays on the outside. And he got to play exclusively in the slot where he belongs this game because we had Shaq Griffin and Stephon Gilmore, and he showed up. My goodness, Byron Murphy led the team in tackles, and they did not have too many completions on his guy. They had one first down on Slayton, and that's all I can remember about Byron Murphy giving something up. So love to see him actually being able to play where he's best, being in the slot. Our run defense, what came to life. Harrison Phillips, who we just re-signed today, extended his contract. Uh he had a sack and was stuffing the run like nobody's business. And I mean, the Giants had a new offensive line. The three of their guys are new from last year, which after the sacks they gave up last year, you would hope that they would renew that. But we had our defense show up in so many ways. And I will just say, like, as I said before, Sam Darnold, I would say he had a perfect game for what he could have done. Like I said earlier, the interception was not his fault. The only sack he took was early on in the game where Dexter Lawrence was ISO'd against Ed Ingram, our worst offensive lineman, and he just shoved him back into him and brought him down. And after that, we schemed correctly to double Lawrence every single play, and Sam Darnold was fine back in the pocket. Um, and he started the day 12 for 12. And no, that wasn't just passes to the running backs because, CJ Ham, 2 catches, Aaron Jones, 2 catches, Ty Chandler, 3 catches, and then Ty Chandler's were later in the game. Speaking of starting at your own one, we had a 99-yard touchdown drive, which is the first time since 2008 that we've done that. So love to see that. Um, Love that the announcers also said that New York has never scored a touchdown in the first quarter, either all of last season or in any of their openers. And Minnesota was just like, how about no touchdowns, period? So love that. And what I love most, Aaron Jones, we have a running game. We didn't score a rushing touchdown till week 8 last year. Week 8. Aaron Jones beat that by a quarter in a quarter of football. Like, and it was just so nice seeing him able to find the line, rush through it, and then even after getting into a pile of guys, just push it forward. This is the best back we've had since prime Dalvin. So I just hope he can stay healthy. And Ty Chandler is such a great compliment to him. Um, and I think that this is a great 1-2 punch. And the best thing overall, though, I will say, didn't come on the stat sheet. It was Sam Darnold just looking so comfortable in this game and not trying to force anything. Like he wasn't trying to be like, oh, okay, Jefferson's down there somewhere. He wasn't doing that. He was taking what the defense gave him. He would make the pass, make the completion, move the line forward. I would even say the delay of game penalties weren't really on him. Guys struggled to get set. I think that's a schematic change that you work on this week. But just Sam Darnold's command of the offense. Again, like I said last week, he doesn't have to reinvent the wheel. He doesn't have to be a world beater. He's getting 400 yards and 4 touchdowns. Like he can just do exactly this every game. More touchdowns than turnovers. Looking comfortable in the pocket, finding open receivers, not making stupid mistakes. Like I don't know what I was expecting, but I was not expecting Sam Darnold to be this good, and I was not expecting a dominant win like this. So, I hope this is sustainable and not just the Giants being bad. Part of me believes it's both, and I think that's probably the correct answer. But overall, I was the happiest I've been in a long time with that game.
Okay, because this has got pretty long, I'm just gonna go for these real quick. Just say fact or fiction, maybe a sentence. I'll go just this list real quick. Green Bay needs to go after a vet QB with Love's injury.
No, fiction. I think that you know, he's not out that long. They already made the trade for Willis. So
Josh Allen will carry the Bills even with bad defense.
fact, how far that is remains to be seen, but any wins they get will most likely be because of him.
Despite the loss, Tennessee's rebuilt defense looks great.
Uh Neither. I don't know
We
if
need to
it
see
if
more.
Caleb is that bad and we just got window dressing on the preseason or if Tennessee's defense is truly good. So I'm gonna say to be TBD there.
Once they face the Colts or Texans, we'll really see. But Deshaun Watson will not finish the year as the starter.
Hmm. Fiction because they put in so much money to him. I think they have to let him finish out this year, and then he's gone.
Honestly, I could see Jameis Winston coming in either Deshaun Watson's not able to finish the year, or he keeps playing that bad where they don't have a choice but to bench him. Uh, Bryce Young is probably a bust.
I mean, I don't want to hate on him because I don't know. Well, I mean, would we be talking about Bryce Young the same way we talk about CJ Stroud if he had been drafted to the Texans? Because like Carolina just does not have the pieces. I mean, Brian Burns was one of their best players, and he's on the Giants now, and he didn't do anything against us. But that's more to say about our tackles than anything else. But like Carolina does not have the pieces. Your best receiver is a 34-year-old Adam Thielen. I love the guy, my favorite NFL player, but at 34 years old, he can't do everything for you. So,
So I
I
also
mean,
saw Bryce Young missing passes badly. So
well, when
we'll
he's got no
see.
time to throw the ball,
Well, I mean, even when he was getting time, he was overthrowing guys, underthrowing guys. The interceptions were just bad, but we'll give him a bit more time. But if things do not improve soon, I think we're getting to that point. Um, week one, Joe Burrow is one of the worst QBs in the NFL.
true, absolutely true.
Starting QBs need to play more in the preseason.
Um, False. I mean, I think it really depends. You know, Sam Darnold played one drive, first preseason game, and came out with a great showing. Um, and I mean, you see a lot of these other quarterbacks come out and do that, but you also risk the injury. And I think that if you don't have a competent backup, then you don't throw him out there. Um, and I mean, it's dependent because for me, I'd rather not risk injury, especially after losing McCarthy. I think that's probably why we kept Darnold off the field. But it's just how quickly you can lose a quarterback. I think it really depends, and I think that I would err on the side of caution. So I would say no. Um,
So I also
Keep
feel
the
like we
quarterbacks
keep
off.
having this conversation every year where the quarterbacks that played in the preseason come out doing well, the ones that didn't come out struggling at first. And it's just one of those things that we keep having conversations about at the start of every year. But I feel like once we get to the midseason, it's not as serious, but especially in like the first few weeks where these are some of the games that are going to cost you at the end of the season, or these are the
Right.
games that are going to separate you from winning the division, winning the one seed, and maybe going to the Super Bowl. So we'll see what happens, but that's all we got.
Yeah, especially with the division matches and like the conference matches. Like I believe you said your first three games are AFC opponents.
Yep.
So yeah, like if you guys had lost that game, you wouldn't really be in so much of a hole because it's not going to be that embedded into the tiebreaker that you would have to face where you competing for a wild card spot. But like um our game against the Giants when we got the Niners, the Texans, the Packers, and the Jets coming up, and then the Lions following that. Like the Giants was basically a must win game because it's in conference and out of the opponents that we had, that was the easiest one. So we definitely needed that game, and I think that that goes to more of what you said. If you have a week one opponent that is in conference, maybe you consider playing your starters at least a couple drives in preseason. But if your first opponent is an AFC opponent, then or like an out of conference opponent, then I think that you can probably be all right with sitting them. So maybe that's something that would go into it as well.
Okay. You want to end this
Well,
off?
all right. This has been VHawks Podcast. Skull.
Peace.